You know what I find interesting about people who keep lying about Kamala Harris's record on different policies while she was AG or DA in California? Or the fact that some of y'all are coming for the fact that she's married to a white man, or you're claiming she's not black, or you're saying that she's a DEI hire when y'all don't understand how the Constitution lays out how a vice president is selected into that position by the president. Or you're saying that she slept her way to the top because you have no real talking points about her record or her experience. Let's get into her opponent for a moment, shall we? Her opponent is Donald J. Trump, who, before he became president of the United States, he was a reality TV star with no political experience. We haven't seen his high school transcripts. We haven't seen his college transcripts to confirm if he graduated from either or. He hid his tax returns. He lied about the value of his condos. He withheld federal documents after being told repeatedly to return them. He's a convicted felon. He has 3 baby mamas and 5 kids. While married to one of his baby mamas, he had an affair with a porn star and tried to pay her hush money to cover it up. He likes to grab women by the vagina. He was at the Epstein party, multiple, within the first 30 days of his presidency. He decided that he was going to ban all Muslims and had Muslim families separated, not being able to get back into the country. He had this country in disarray. Not to mention, when it comes to the border, he separated Latin American families, where he lost over 1,500 children to the system that the Biden-Harris administration had to recover, and did. He pulled out a full-page ad to call for the execution of 5 Black innocent teenagers. He told his constituents to stand in the sunlight and inject
As United States Senator, I was the elected Attorney General, as I've mentioned, of California. And before that, I was a courtroom prosecutor. In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women. Fraudsters who ripped off consumers. Cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
Welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. Why was the young lady whispering? She was, she had some great talking points. Why was she whispering? But Vice President Kamala Harris, she is on a roll, over $200+ million raised already. That total probably have gone up since I last checked the numbers. And meanwhile, on the other end of the spectrum, Elon Musk has rescinded his pledge to give Donald Trump $45 million a month, saying that he is just not into uh, cultish type behavior. Really, Elon? It's American politics at its finest, right? But there's lots of other news this morning, including the Secret Service director has resigned after the alleged attempt on Donald Trump's life. She succumbed to the pressure that Congress was giving her. But what's interesting about that, and you knew this was coming. What's interesting about that was the fact that there have been so many other breaches in the Secret Service over the past couple of years. I mean, we even saw, we reported this story, that a Secret Service agent was robbed at gunpoint in Washington. Um, Something's been up with the Secret Service for a long time. So perhaps this change is needed. But here's the thing. Um, Someone at a Trump rally was shot. And so Republicans decided they lost their minds in their attempts to show Trump that they pledged that their allegiance is clearly with him, and so they got rid of the Secret Service director. Look, some people say better late than never. But I tell you what, that was quite a hearing too. When we talk about that Secret Service hearing, um, we had some, we had several, a number, I should say, of members of Congress just grill the director, including Jasmine Crockett on both sides of the aisle. So Jasmine Crockett on the Democratic side, and of course you know you were going to hear from Marjorie Taylor Greene on the Republican side. So really, she had no other recourse but to resign. They were going to prepare impeachment documents against her anyway, and she was not going to survive that. I think she recognized it and she stepped aside, as really she should have. There is certainly a breach in Secret Service, and to hear the stories coming out of Butler, Pennsylvania, when someone was shot at a Trump rally and the alleged attempt on Trump, to hear the explanations was like hearing a grade school student and an early grade school student trying to explain something, because the various things that they were saying. The Secret Service was saying that where the shooter was outside of their jurisdiction. It was the state police's jurisdiction. State police says no, it was not our jurisdiction. It was the county's jurisdiction, and the county said we don't have enough people. We didn't have enough people to cover that area. So it was everybody's kicking the can down the road, deflecting blame. Um, and we have to give them this. It is unheard of that a former president, the security detail of a former president, um, and a presidential candidate, the nominee for a party, would be in that direct line of fire. So there was a massive fail on the Secret Service's part, no doubt about it. Massive fail. President Biden is going to speak today. He announced that he is going to address the nation this evening from the Oval Office about his future plans, about his decision to step aside, and his decision to endorse Vice President Kamala Harris. And interesting about this, and I wish I would have saved this tweet because I'm going to paraphrase it instead of quoting it. But someone really set the table on it, saying that with all of the rhetoric, with all of the backstabbing and everything else that went on the past few weeks within the Democratic Party, Biden kept silent. Biden continued to maintain his integrity and waited. And we talked a little bit about this before. Waited as the Republicans chose their vice president, as Trump chose his vice presidential candidate, one that they now are openly admitting they regret. Um, Allowed them to focus on President Biden throughout their convention. I mean, you had all the news outlets, mainstream outlets, with multiple headlines, not a day, but per hour, about the Republican National Convention and how they were, you know, dealing death blows to President Biden and the Democrats' chances in November. And Biden allowed all that to go on. Let them make all of their missteps, and then say, you know what? I am going to pass the baton to the younger, experienced vice president. And the delegates are pledged. And that was the other part of that tweet that really caught my attention, because there's this thought, and we might hear this tonight, that all that week while dealing with COVID and dealing with the Republicans' attacks and dealing with that all of that negative publicity and the backstabbing and the infighting, Biden was working the phones with the delegates, getting drumming up enough support that he was comfortable enough to pass the reins to Kamala Harris, make ensuring that she had enough delegates, which she does have enough delegates for the nomination, despite what you hear from uh, Joe Manchin and maybe one or two others. Um, there will not be a challenge to her, and that was one of the things that and I wish I could remember the person who tweeted it because they were right on the money. But he ensured there will not be a challenge to Vice President Kamala Harris at the convention next month. In fact, her nomination will be, her being the presumptive nominee is already wrapped up, but everything will become official in a matter of a couple of weeks when the I guess the rules require each nominee, each candidate, each party's nominee to uh, be known. To- so um, there's no question who is the Democratic nominee at this point. The only question is who will be the vice president elect. Or well, I think they were getting ahead of ourselves saying elect, but who she chooses as the vice president. New York Times has a story this morning in which they try to break down all of the potential candidates. Now, she has not in any way even hinted um, who she might be thinking about. But they have a list in which they uh, list them as favorites, and then and by swing state candidates, by red state governors, and every single governor, Democratic governor, has endorsed her. Then they say the second tier, which includes Pete Buttigieg. One of the things that they said, and Wes Moore is also in that second tier, as well as J.B. Pritzker of Chicago, of Illinois, really. Tim Walz of Minnesota is in that so-called second tier that the New York Times. Andy Beshear of Kentucky is among those red state governors, and Roy Cooper is mentioned as well for some reason. I'm not sure that he would be her choice. But Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, Mark Kelly, senator from Arizona, Josh Shapiro, of course, the governor of Pennsylvania, is also. Josh Shapiro seems to be the guy that a lot of people are. Yeah, the New York Tombs, he says, is full of magabilly. Josh Shapiro seems to be the guy that many are focusing in on, and not so sure. I mean, Andy Beshear, I don't know that you can. Um, I have a feeling it's going to be Beshear. If I had to guess, if I had to offer a guess, I have a feeling it's going to be Andy Beshear for several reasons. I mean, he's a strong governor in a very, very red state, who might be able to um, really, really turn that ticket around in a red state. Um, but he also was somebody who was out front and center, handling the COVID crisis, the pandemic, just as well as anyone. And we know that when you think about how it is looked upon that Donald Trump handled COVID, to have someone with his background and his record with COVID, Bayshore, that is, could be another notch for the Democratic ticket. Now, Trump, on the other hand, as he looks at his choice, JD Vance is still having to try and overcome his history of anti-Trump rhetoric of calling Trump basically he called him someone who's committed sexual assault. He's called him out for that. He's called him out for being incompetent, et cetera, et cetera. And these were not news stories written by print journalists. These were interviews that he did that the videos of these interviews are just permeating social media. Um, and then, of course, the fact that his wife is Middle Eastern, I believe, is not sitting well with folks in the MAGA movement. So, and then apparently they didn't know. Apparently Donald Trump did not know that JD Vance's wife was not um, a white American, which is interesting. Don't you vet your vice president? You know, when Joe Biden was selecting vice presidents, his vice president, and he went through uh, a number of candidates, primarily female, and I mean they did their homework. I mean, other presidents did their homework. Even during Trump's first term, when he did brought what's his name from Ohio, Mike Pence. Um, and it seems that they did the vetting process. They realized that because a lot of people, if you recall, were saying, you know, people are scared of Trump. They should be scared of Pence. Pence was supposed to be a lot like Trump, and that did not prove to be because he refused to bow to Trump when it came to certifying the election. Whereas JD Vance said he absolutely would. He now says he absolutely would have done the opposite of what Mike Pence did on January 6th. So, um, you know, they're pledging their allegiance. They're pledging their allegiance. There was a great interview. This young kid, white kid, um, I think he has a podcast or something, and he was interviewing Byron Donalds, and Byron Donalds, and he was called. I think he's 18 years old. This kid, and he was calling him out. He asked him a question about those in Trump's former administration, and Donalds was starting to answer the question by denouncing those in Biden's administration. And the young man was like, "I did not ask that question." He says, um, I want you to um, answer about Trump's people in his. Why did he fire all these people? It was you know he had such a high turnover, and Donald's just lost his stuff. He couldn't. This 18-year-old kid cooked him, and you know then of course all these photos and the records of Byron Donalds' convictions and jailhouse photos and mugshots of Donald have surfaced as well. Because if you recall, he was arrested a couple of times, um, and those the law that allowed Byron Donalds to plead out his case and a diversion program. He that allowed him to escape prison time. He wants to abolish that law. That is pretty amazing. Donnell Suggs, the of the Atlanta Voice, says North Carolina has 15 delegates. It's a swing state along with Pennsylvania's 20. They both are really important for this election, and that's true. And that might be, and you're right. That could be what the campaign is really considering when they're considering a vice president. Um, but remember this, though, Donnell, um, that it hasn't been since Kennedy and Johnson, when Kennedy selected Johnson as his vice president, that a vice president got that ticket to win his particular state. So I think they've kind of cooled on the idea that they have to select a vice president from a state that that they need to win. I think they've cooled on that. But it could still be so that they are considering, I'm sure they're considering that those 20 delegates in Pennsylvania, those 15 in North Carolina. I'm sure they really are considering that. But they are, I'm sure, aware that the last vice president to have an effect on the outcome of a race in the state was, you have to go way back to LBJ. Austin says, "Where are Barack and Michelle? Waiting for election returns, then until." Wow. You know, there is a supposed, and I don't know. I don't know. I kind of spoke on this a little bit the other day, but I can't be sure. I didn't go back and look it up. But there's this supposed history that Obama always waits till the convention to endorse. I don't know that that's true. Maybe that's one of his supporters trying to take cover for him or give him cover. But it does look pretty strange that now, particularly after yesterday, when during a press conference, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries have endorsed Kamala Harris. Nancy Pelosi has come out and endorsed her. All Democratic governors have come out and endorsed her. The DLCC, the DNC, not the DNC, but the other organizations have come out and endorsed. All of the labor unions, even those who kind of kept quiet during the Biden campaign, have come out to endorse her. So I'm not sure what could possibly be holding up a Barack Obama endorsement. No, he's out there hanging out, or at least last check, he was out there in France hanging out with the Olympians, but not sure. It is a fair point at this juncture to ask, where in the world is not Carmen Sandiego, but Barack Obama? Where are you, Barack? And of course, Barack doesn't. He. All right, let me do the Bernie Mac thing. Let's move on. Let's move on. Mike V says, I would like to see Beto O'Rourke as VP. A lot of people, too. I've heard that a lot, too, Mike V. Beto O'Rourke, solid choice. A lot of people would say solid choice. I'm not sure, Timothy. I've lost my train of thought, maybe, on what you're referring to about it's in the movie. So you're gonna have to refresh my memory on that. Yeah, I know I got a short attention span. Governor Westmore, Michelle Madison says, claimed that he is not interested in the position. Thankfully, he appears to put the interests of Maryland first. I don't know that Governor Moore is a future presidential candidate for sure. Not sure that he would be the right choice at this moment. But he is certainly a future presidential candidate. He and Gavin Newsom both. Um, Gavin Newsom out of California. Not sure that they want to go number 2 on a ticket right now. And let's face it, Democrats, despite the unbelievable enthusiasm these last couple of days, Democrats are still kind of shaky about everything that has happened, and perhaps some of that is guilt. Um, so we will see. We will see. But I'm not. I would be shocked if Westmore or a Gavin Newsom would be the pick. Now, there's also some issues too with Gavin Newsom being out of California. Apparently, Vice President Harris would have to change her residency from California to DC, which would be easy to do if she is to pick Gavin Newsom as her vice president. I think there are some rules that can be bent a little bit, that you can't be from the same state. And yeah, and as Greer says, we don't know what the elites negotiated behind the scenes. We really don't. And you can best believe some negotiations have and are continually taking place. She really has very little time left to choose her vice president. So we will see. But again, Biden is going to address the nation tonight. A lot of people will certainly be interested in that. Vance's wife race is in the movie. What movie? Talk to me, Timothy. What movie? There's a lot of movies I haven't seen, but someone says she's the same as Kamala Harris, has the same background. Who said that? Luke Beasley is the kid's name. Okay, I'm lost. David said,
I don't know, Kamala. I served in the United States Marine Corps, and I built a business. What the hell have you done other than collect a government check for the past 20 years?
Wait a minute. Wackadoodle say what? Did you guys hear what he just said? Let's run that back one more time.
I served in the United States Marine
You can't make this shit up. Hey, JD, you do know that in the Marine Corps, you're drawing a government paycheck, right? You know that, right? In fact, while we're on the topic, in the Marine Corps, you get government health care. You get government housing. You get government-sponsored education. You know everything you and your party don't want for American citizens. If socialized health care, housing, and education is good for the Marine Corps and the rest of the United States military and every sitting member of Congress, if it's the gold standard for our government and our military, why do you and your party not want it for American citizens? And let's not skip over the fact that you said, I don't know Kamala. So wait a minute, you're the vice presidential nominee for the Republican Party and you don't know your opponent? You don't even have to be good at research to just learn your opponent. She's the sitting vice president of the United States. You can go to whitehouse.gov and read her entire bio. So why don't you know anything about her, JD? That seems super lazy, bud. Pretty embarrassing. Also, can I just apologize to all the troops on behalf of JD Vance for insulting you? Even though you're drawing a government paycheck, I still support you.
I don't know Kamala. I served in the United States Marine Corps, and I built
his administration, very different than Biden's administration, have said this guy's not fit to be president. So how do you explain that? So many people in the room for the most important decision saying this guy can't be anywhere close to the White House.
Well, first of all, let's say this. Political people don't think they should ever be fired, even when they're doing a bad job. If Donald Trump looked at people who were working for him early on and got rid of them and they have an axe to grind, I can't be concerned about
Like
that.
Pence or all those people.
Or am I going?
Oh, you answer the question though?
You ready? Here we go. Now, Alejandro Mayorkas is a failure. Pete Buttigieg, this dude took off for a month. Nobody even knew he was gone.
You're not talking about Trump's administration officials.
Are you talking or am I talking?
Taking a long route to it.
Bro, I know on your side,
Mike Pence. Let's go with just Mike Pence.
On your side, I know you guys will just use talking points, but when you get an educated answer, be patient and let me give it to you.
I want to hear Mike Pence, other administration officials, then I'm ready.
You go over there, and then when you're ready to have a conversation, come see me. Yes,
I'm ready. I'm here.
Yes, man. What's up?
What's your
So
Absolutely fried Byron Donalds. What an idiot. Come on, give me a break. The kid is asking legitimate questions. Answer the question. And that is the deflection that we continue to see out of people like Byron Donalds. Continually see that. Listen, just answer questions about policy. That's what you should be doing, right? Answering questions about policy. We have not seen that. We have not seen that. The U.S. Department of Justice confirmed late yesterday that it is assessing the circumstances surrounding the fatal shooting of an unarmed Black woman by a Sangamon County Sheriff's deputy. Ben Crump, of course, is representing the family. And he said at a news conference yesterday that the DOJ had indeed opened an investigation into Sonia Massey's shooting death. He says this is the worst police shooting video ever. We remember Massey, she called 911 to report a prowler outside her home in the early morning hours of July 6th. And about 30 minutes later, the deputies who responded to the call reported shots fired and Massey had been struck by gunfire. Former Sheriff Deputy Sean Grayson, who was 30 years old, was indicted for first-degree murder last week. He is being detained until trial. After his arrest, Grayson was fired. The body camera video of the incident was also released, and a spokesperson for the Department of Justice said the department is aware of and assessing the circumstances surrounding the tragic officer-involved death of Miss Sonia Massey and extends condolences to her family and loved ones. We've seen the video. We know that police claimed to be checking the house for intruders. They went inside. She was wearing a nightgown. They asked if she could remove a pot from the stove that was heating. And when the unidentified officer who responded with Grayson moves away, Massey says, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." And Grayson, who is standing in the living room, threatens to shoot her in the face and draws his weapon. She drops below a kitchen counter that separates them, puts her hands up, and apologizes. She rises back up and appears to be holding the upended pot. Well, he fires 3 shots, including a fatal shot to her head. But you know, the other part of this it carries on this troubling legacy of racial violence right there in Springfield. Her family says she is a descendant of William Donegan. And folks, William Donegan was a black man who was lynched by a white mob, but survived during the city's infamous 1908 race riot that took 17 black lives over a 2-day period in mid-August of that year. So, and as a result of the violence and carnage, a group of white and black Americans banded together to create the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP. What a history that she links back to. Her family said that the irony of having to reach out to the NAACP today for help after her killing is not lost on them. Um, this is what one family member said: the more things change, the more they stay the same. And they also noted, here's an interesting note, too, a very, very interesting note, that Miss Massey was taken to the same hospital, St. John's Hospital, as William Donegan, where she was pronounced dead, and where Donegan also died after being lynched. That is quite, quite astonishing. Yeah, what the cops said after the murder was also extremely troubling. And Timothy Williams said someone slowed the video down and it looked like her hands were empty. Um, but he had threatened to shoot her even before she, raised the pot. Um, and it seemed, when you look at the video, that one officer was kind of directing the other officer to get closer or to get in a certain position. I mean, it was really, really disgusting how this unfolded. This woman called for help and instead was gunned down in her kitchen. Power 96 said it's definitely premeditated. Wow. Well, of course, we will continue to follow this story as it continues to unfold. There's more video, uh, as indicated here, after the shooting, that suggests, probably tells you why he was immediately fired, immediately arrested, and held without bail. It just shows the how aggravating this is, because generally we know that the unions, and not just the unions but the hierarchy, generally, hey, wait a minute, we don't rush to judgment, et cetera, et cetera. So it perhaps an indication of just how egregious this really was, with this officer. So, in New York, a disciplinary panel said that a state judge should be removed from office for engaging in a racially offensive, profane diatribe during which she invoked her judicial position, threatening to shoot black teenagers, and expressed a bias in favor of the police. The judge, Justice Aaron Gall of State Supreme Court in Oneida County, made the remarks to law enforcement officers after a high school graduation party she was at last year, or 2 years ago, I should say, in July. Um, it that party descended into verbal arguments and physical fights, and the arrival of a large number of so-called uninvited guests, according to the state's Commission on Judicial Conduct. The officers' body-worn and dashboard cameras recorded Justice Gall's comments, and she acknowledged having made them. The commission found that impropriety had permeated her behavior, and that's in quotes, permeated. They said permeated her behavior on the night in question, and that her wide array of misconduct severely undermined public confidence in her ability to serve as a fair and impartial judge. The judge's behavior, they said, in this case is as shocking as anything we've seen in 40 years of judicial ethics enforcement. According to the report, Gall attended the party at a friend's home in New Hartford, New York, with her husband and 3 teenage children. The party's host hired a bartender and provided a keg of beer that guests could serve themselves from. Well, a large number of apparent party crashers showed up after 11:30 p.m., according to the panel. 4 black teenagers arrived after learning of the party from a live video feed, and the driver then lost his car keys, according to the report. And that led to arguments and fights that broke out between the invited and uninvited guests. And officers from several law enforcement agencies responded. Police body cam footage showed the judge telling the black teenagers, "You got to leave. You're not going to find your keys. You've got to call an Uber and get off the property." She then says, "Well, you're going to get in an Uber, buddy, or you're going to get a cop escort home. That's how it's happening. That's what I'm telling you right now. That's how I roll. That's how I roll," she says. He says, "That's how Mrs. G rolls. That's how Judge Gall rolls. We're clearing this place out." These are her words. All of that is her words. She tried to get the police to arrest the black teenagers for trespassing, saying this. She says, "I've done this for a million years." And she appeared to be intoxicated. Now she claims she wasn't. She says, "I've done this for a million years. I'm a lawyer. I'm a judge. I know this." She also yelled at the teenagers to get off the property. And that's from Judge Gall. She says, "I'm a judge." Both the judge's husband and her 18-year-old son were involved in the fight. And she told officers that her son, quote, "put a smack down once he got hit." She also said, quote, "My husband and son got hit first, but they finished like I taught them." This judge is amazing. She told police that black teenagers, quote, "don't look like they're that smart. They're not going to business school, that's for sure." She also said that if the teenagers were to come back looking for their keys, she says, "told the cops, you can shoot them on the property. I'll shoot them on the property." Oh, this woman, wow. Oh my God.
Kind of split open pretty far.
Yeah, I've been telling him since got eyes on him that he needs to go get checked out.
He was definitely hit with something.
If the key turns up,
we're absolutely going to throw it in the toilet. You're welcome.
Somebody's sister's coming to pick them up and get him out of here, and I'm going to get his information. And
if we find the keys, the cop car, let him wait there. And that's Judge Gall. I'm a judge. I'm telling you, get off the.
Hey, dude, go in at the car.
I'm a Supreme Court judge.
I know you, Judge.
Sitting here, I'll shoot them on the.
No.
If I have to clear it out, I will. The good part is, I'm always on your side. You know I'd take anyone down for you guys. You know that. You know that. You know I am on your side.
They don't look like they're that smart, honestly. You're not going to business school. That's fine.
He put a smack down once he got hit.
I didn't say it was one-sided. 4 or 5 large active fight in the roadway, approximately 20 to 30.
She's going to find their keys. And she says she's going to flush them down the toilet if she finds them. And I mean, it's just, this is a state Supreme Court justice.
Get out of here.
I'm staying here.
Everybody, you're putting your hands on people. Get everybody out of here. Get out of here. Everybody get in your cars and get the
Well, they have recommended removing her. She had been suspended with pay, and now they are moving to totally terminate her. And it appears from what we've seen in the video, appears that, hey, in the words of Malcolm X, the chickens have come home to roost. So got Malcolm in a lot of trouble too. Malcolm shouldn't have said that. He got him in a lot of trouble. But how right that statement is for this. How right it is. A Missouri man who has spent, and we've seen this story 100,000 times, haven't we? A Missouri man who spent more than 30 years in prison for a murder he has long said he did not commit, had his conviction finally overturned. He's not free yet because of the state attorney general still pressing the prosecutor and the judge to keep him in prison and to appeal the decision to overturn it. Christopher Dunn was 18 years old when he was accused of fatally shooting 15-year-old Ricco Rogers on the night of May 18, 1990. Despite no physical evidence linking Dunn to the crime, he was convicted of first-degree murder based largely on the testimony of two young witnesses who said they saw the shooting. Now, Dunn's mother and sister had said he was home with them at the time, watching television and talking on their landline phone. The two witnesses were 12 and 14 years old, and they later recanted their testimony and said they were coerced by prosecutors and the police. Dunn was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And St. Louis City Judge Jason Singheiser ruled on Monday, weeks after a hearing on the now 52-year-old's fate, that the conviction should be overturned. He wrote that St. Louis Circuit Attorney Gabe Gore, who filed a motion in February seeking to vacate the guilty verdict, quote, has made a clear and convincing showing of actual innocence that undermines the basis for Dunn's convictions because, in light of new evidence, no juror acting reasonably would have voted to find Dunn guilty of these crimes beyond a reasonable doubt. The court documents state that a man who said he was present when the shooting occurred testified at a 2018 hearing that the two young witnesses could not have identified Dunn as the shooter because it was too dark outside. The documents also state that Dunn's trial counsel, quote, admitted to several failures, including failure to speak to a number of witnesses who could have proven his innocence. It was the Midwest Innocence Project, which is representing Dunn, who really went after this. And they said they are overjoyed. They said now Chris Dunn looks forward to spending time with his wife and family as a free man. Gore said the ruling was a great day for Christopher Dunn and a great day for justice. But still, the Missouri Attorney General's office has continued to oppose vacating the conviction. They was at a hearing in May, and they test that the two witnesses, they continue to say those two witnesses were correct, even though they recanted. Assistant Attorney General Tristan Estep said that the verdict was accurate. In a recorded interview played at the hearing, witness Michael Davis Jr. said that he lied and identified Dunn as the shooter because he thought Dunn was affiliated with a rival gang. The other witness was DeMaurice Stepp, who changed his story several times over the years and has said that he did not see Dunn as the shooter. The Missouri Attorney General's office filed a notice of appeal on Monday. Dunn is the third person to be exonerated in Missouri since a law was passed in 2021 that allows prosecutors to seek the exoneration of people sentenced to life without parole. Kevin Strickland was freed in 2021 after more than 40 years in prison, and Lamar Johnson was freed just last year after serving nearly 28 years. Previously, the law only allowed prosecutors to seek to overturn convictions in death penalty cases. Wow. That is, and that's the thing about, and Dr. Nicole says they need to review all that former judges' cases. Exactly. I agree wholeheartedly. She's got to go, David Youngblood says. But that's the thing that about the justice system, the legal system, criminal justice, even being shown to be innocent, you're still spending time. They keep you in there. It's a whole lot of nonsense that they go through, which is in this case done. I mean, back in 2018, these witnesses came and testified that they lied, that they made stuff up. At that moment, because those were the only two witnesses that they had, and at that moment, he should have been released. But this idea of having to go through, go through the computer paperwork, et cetera, and these appeals, that attorney general should not be able to stop this man from being released. And they determined that he should be released. And here we are. He's still there. He spent all of his adult life in prison. And right, Quinn says, amazing how someone has all the power to deny your freedom and admit wrongful convictions. There is, when they talk about criminal justice reform, and they have not even begin to touch it. They really haven't. Also, this morning, everyone knows that air pollution is bad for your health, but how bad depends a lot on who you are. People of different races and ethnicities, education levels, locations, and socioeconomic situations tend to be exposed to different degrees of air pollution. Even at the same exposure levels, people's ability to cope with its effects by accessing timely health care, for example, varies. A new study by Stanford Medicine researchers and collaborators, which takes into account both exposure to air pollution and susceptibility to its harms, found that Black Americans are significantly more likely to die from causes related to air pollution compared with other racial and ethnic groups. The study found that Black Americans face a double jeopardy: more exposure to polluted air, along with more susceptibility to its adverse health effects because of societal disadvantages. The researchers said, and quote, "We see differences across all factors that we examine, such as education, geography, and social vulnerability. But what is striking is that the differences between racial ethnic groups, partially due to our method, um, they are substantially larger than for all of these other factors." Um, it is, we use that word so many times. I say it all the time, disproportionate. And when you hear that word disproportionate or disproportionately, either one of those two, we're talking about something that affects Black people and people of color. There's no question about it, right? And in this case, pollution. David Youngblood says we have to start prosecuting the prosecutors who engage in misconduct. Yeah, it's just like taking away qualified immunity. You got to take away that type of immunity that these prosecutors have. Timothy Williams says environmental racism is real. And Power 96 says Cancer Alley nearly 100 times between New Orleans and Baton Rouge is the worst in the USA. And Mike B says keep telling folks that climate impact and climate tech research and development is where Black folks need to be at. No lie detected. No lie detected. I saw a picture today in closing. I saw a fantastic picture of Lee Daniels eating dinner with none other than Monique. It was a very public, very messy, years and years spanning feud that Monique and Lee Daniels had, and they have finally reunited, and reunited in a meaningful way. Um, for fans of the 2009 film Precious, the reunion will also take place on screen. Monique co-stars in the Lee Daniels film The Deliverance, which is set to hit Netflix later this year. Lee Daniels said this movie is inspired by a true story. The film synopsis reads that after moving into a mysterious house, a struggling mother must face down her demons in order to save her children's soul. The project stars Andra Day, Anjanae Ellis Taylor, and Glenn Close, along with Monique. Daniels and Lee, they finally reconciled their differences just a couple of years ago, 13 years after it began. If you remember, the feud stemmed from the comedian's decision not to participate in the Precious Awards campaign, as it meant her spending less time with her family. While Monique went on to win the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, she publicly accused the film's producers, Lee Daniels, Oprah Winfrey, and Tyler Perry, of blackballing her. And when you say accused, I mean, it turned out to be very, very true. I mean, they took this very talented actress's livelihood from her for years, and concerted effort to make sure she didn't work, exhibiting and exerting their powers at the time. And it is, as Greer says, a shame. Lee Daniels became the first, if still not the only. I don't know the situation. Yeah, she had to fight. I don't know the situation between her and Oprah at this point, and her and Tyler Perry at this point. Not sure that they have. I know that she has said publicly We remember very well her interview with Shannon Sharp, but they have not publicly apologized, as Lee Daniels has publicly done so. I mean, in a very big way. If you recall, he joined her on stage at her Monique and Friends April Fool's Day with the Queen of Comedy show on Staten Island. And this was back in 2022. And he, in front of that audience, her audience, in a way that an apology can really, people say, I'm sorry if I did this, if I'm sorry if anybody was affected or whatever. And they're so hollow when they do that little social media, those little publicists written apologies. Lee Daniels manned up. Lee Daniels went out in her crowd, took the microphone and said, quote, "I am so sorry for hurting you in any way that I did." That is standing up. That is owning it. And Lee Daniels did that. And yeah, as Power 96 brings out, even in her interview with Charlemagne, she told him, "One day you will apologize." And Charlemagne finally did. He was very wrong. Michelle Madison says Monique is from Baltimore and she was not having disrespect. She was taken through the mill. They killed any earning power she had. Um, and it's a shame. That's the definition of black on black crime. That's for sure. What was done to Monique. But it's really good to see that the news here is that it's good to see that this has happened. Such a high profile stain on the black Hollywood, I should say. And Monique really, she stood, listen, she stood, as you folks say today, she stood on business. She was not going to you talk about, I mentioned that word integrity earlier. If we recall so vividly, Steve Harvey told her it's not about integrity, it's about money. Steve Harvey tried to get her to uh, go against her morals, go against anybody's morals, and she could not believe that he sat her up there and told her it was not about integrity. And she's winning now because of it. Good for Monique. Good for Lee Daniels. And hopefully Steve Harvey, hopefully Oprah and Tyler Perry can all. Greer says Steve is also down with Trump, so that explains that. But regardless, hopefully they all can follow Lee Daniels's lead and make this happen and make this right. And you know what? Making it right also, in my opinion. Now, look, in my opinion, making it right is also writing a nice check for her. Wages lost. Timothy Williams says, I thought Steve already apologized. Well, if he did, that is great. I'm not aware of it, or maybe I missed it, Timothy. So it's good to hear that he did. But as I said, write her a check. She's earned that. She has earned that. Write her a check and put some when you go to court in a civil matter and they assess damages, they also is punitive and compensatory. Well, there should be some punitive and compensatory damages given to Monique. And yes, as Greer says, they certainly have the money. They certainly have the money. So put some cherries on top of whatever you uh, might give her, but you should definitely write a check. Um, Timothy, I'm trying to say Timothy. It's Timide. She says you have people thinking I'm a guy. Listen, people still think I'm a woman. Stacy. Before you go, Power 96 says the National Urban League Convention does kick off today in New Orleans. Yes, indeed. The National Urban League is kicking. New Orleans has been doing a lot this year. Power 96 gives you more reason to barbecue, make some crawfish and all that stuff, and stay out of the swamp. There you go. Hey, everybody, like our YouTube page. Don't just like it. Subscribe to our YouTube page and keep checking us out. We got more news and information that you can use from the Black Press of America, blackpressusa.com. And of course, let it be known at LIBK-news on YouTube. Subscribe and watch from that page as well. We'll see you tomorrow.